Hello. So my name is Bonnie Winfield. I am the Director of Community Partnerships here at Lafayette College. I'm also a posse mentor, and I see my posse here. Cool. Yay. I'm also a creative artist. I have a thing called The Journey Home, where I work with women from the local jail and Lafayette students, and some of the students here are part of that. So my talk is 18042, Here I Stand, I Cannot Do Otherwise. And I thought I'd do a little mindfulness exercise. And that is for everybody to stand up. And join me in 18042, Here I Stand, I Cannot Do Otherwise. So if you could just repeat that. 18042, Here I Stand, I Cannot Do Otherwise. Okay, you can sit down. So when I was asked to do this TED Talk, that's what came to my mind, this 18042. Does anyone know what that is? Our zip code, right? And so that's why I wanted you to stand with me, because this is where we are right now, in this moment. And unless we are like, beam me up, Scotty, right? We're here right now in this zip code. So I started thinking about, why is this 18042, Here I Stand, important to me, right? And so I realized that it is about this journey I've been on. And this journey started in Syracuse. It went to Nicaragua, came back, it keeps moving on me, came back to Binghamton, New York, and then to Tennessee, and now to Easton. So it began in Syracuse. I was taking an urban geography class, and the professor asked me and other students to go to some place in the city, sit on the corner, and to think about the soul of the city in that place. So I went down to the corner of Harrison and Adams Streets in Syracuse, and I sat there. And what I saw were cars and trucks zooming by, going to the highway. I saw across the street the housing projects called the Bricks. Behind me was a big parking lot and the museum. And I kept looking at all of this, right? I didn't see any people. I saw cars going places, going nowhere, actually, seemed like. While I was sitting there, I realized my father told me a story about driving down Harrison Street on his way to the hospital with my mom, who was pregnant for me. And the hospital was just a few blocks away. He described a very different street. He described a community where there were stores and houses and barbershops and bars and all different kinds of things, churches. It was a community, right? And that's where I was born. It was a very different place than what I was feeling when I was watching all of these cars zooming by to go to the highway. And I started thinking about that. And I started thinking about what the urban development and urban renewal did to our communities. And where were those other little babies that were born in that hospital? Were they able to, like me, move out of that area with my family to a village outside 30 miles away? I figured not, unless their skin was white like mine, and realized that that sense of place was very important. At the same time, I was part of the National Congress of Neighborhood Women. National Congress of Neighborhood Women is all over the world, and it's women in communities get together in neighborhoods to make a difference. And one thing they were doing is they were looking at housing in the center of Syracuse. We got together, and we sat in circles. This is one of the first starts of my sitting in circles, right? And we talked with these women about what it would do in the Bricks to make their sense of place and sense of home better. And they talked about planting flowers and putting up little picket fences on the sidewalk and maybe having a rocking chair out there where they could talk to their neighbors. 2 weeks later, I sat with those same women in a city hall meeting where we sat in rows like this. And up in front were 4 white men standing in suits telling us that they were going to tear down the Bricks. We don't need this public housing anymore. We need to do something different. So again, I realized, whoa, what is this sense of place and what is happening? And I realized that when we did that urban renewal, we took away that sense of place. I then did a dissertation on public housing, women who lived in public housing and bought houses through a public-private partnership. This represents one of those houses. Around that time, I had this great experience to go to Nicaragua. This was right after the revolution. When I was in Nicaragua, I went up to the mountains to a clinic. Before I went up there, I saw a baby that was dying of malnutrition. This baby was only 9 months old. She was dying of malnutrition because of the United States, because of our economic boycott. They couldn't get the little tiny needles that were necessary for her transfusions. At the same time, I was the director of infant foster care at Syracuse Catholic Charities, and we had another little baby, 9 months old, who was not able to be adopted. We named her Holly. My teenage sons bought her little sneakers. They wanted to adopt her. She couldn't be adopted because her mother was 13 and was raped by her uncle, who was a drug addict, and the baby was black. So I started putting these things together, and it was really, really troublesome, and I was crying the whole time I was in Nicaragua. So we go up to this clinic, and the director of the clinic's talking, and he seemed like he was talking to me, because I think he thought, whoa, this woman is going to do something. So I said, what can I do for you? What can I do for your people, right? He said, whoa, what can you do? You can go back to your place. Go back to your place and teach your people about what their government is doing, because we believe that the people who live in your place would not want this to happen. So I said, yes, here I am sitting in the mountains of Nicaragua saying yes to this man. I will do this. I will go back to the United States and teach all these people, right? Here I am, entry-level job, Catholic Charities, never been to college, 2 teenage sons, single mom, and I come back. And I get on the little circle way, right, the highway that goes around Syracuse, and I just kept driving around. I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Where am I going to get off? Where is my sense of place? So not to be in place is not only to be nowhere, it is not to exist. That is what our urban renewal did to people, right? Moving to the suburbs, all of that. So I decided I was going to college. Went to college and decided I was going to be a professor. And when I was a professor, I decided I was going to teach about democracy. Now, question is, right, this why of what this theme is. What does that have to do with 18042? What does teaching about democracy have to do with sense of place? So in Binghamton, I got a grant from the university to open a storefront, similar to what I did here, right? I opened a storefront called Embracing the Soul. And students from the college, people from the community, all came down to that storefront to make art. Because I believe making art together makes a big difference. And it had to do with living there on that street and in that town. Around the same time, 9/11 happened. And some of my friends and I got together and we thought we need to have some kind of festival because everyone is feeling, well, you can imagine, right, after 9/11. So we had Healing Our City. And Healing Our City was drumming and dancing and storytelling and all of these things that helped us realize what could happen in that place. This is just an article from the local newspaper that talked about the importance of that activity and that experience for people. We also had music in that place. We had drumming. There is still a drum circle that 15 years later is happening every Tuesday night, and that is the drum circle that I started. So I realized that wherever you stand, I can be the soul, and you can be the soul of that place. My next stop on this little journey was Greenfield, Tennessee. It's a beautiful place. But I really had a hard time finding my sense of place there. But that didn't stop me. I realized that I could help other people figure out what was their sense of place. At the same time as today, people were struggling with what does it mean to be an American. So students at Tusculum College and I went to a couple of elementary schools, and we worked with the children there and their parents and made murals on what it means to be an American. And we did this in 2 different places. Whoops. Now we get to 18042. So here we are. Came back here. I came here to Easton. And again, here I stand. And here I sit down at the circle. So what is this? What is this 18042? How did this all happen, right? And what happened was I heard students talking about, oh, I'm going to go downtown to Easton. I'm going to go to Easton, right? I'm like, wait a minute, you are in Easton. Lafayette is in Easton, right? And so then I started this whole little thing of telling everybody. So I taught a first-year seminar. And in my first-year seminar, we went down and we met in this other storefront that I started here. And we made art with people. This is us making a rug. We wove a rug with women from the local jail. We made murals as part of the first-year seminar on what it means to be part of Easton. This was from a Jane's Walk. I have all kinds of artwork based on this. Having people get a sense of what it means, here I stand, right? These are more pictures of us making murals. So I began to wonder, how does this all come together? How does my saying yes in the mountains of Nicaragua, how does that connect, that teaching about democracy? How does that connect to that sense of place that I realized when I was sitting in the corner of Syracuse on those streets? This is where I integrate citizenship and sense of place. According to Iris Marion Young, citizenship must involve, among other things, the capacity to engage those who are different and yet share the same place. In a liberal arts college, we must take on the challenge to develop a critical pedagogy of place. At the most general level, a critical pedagogy must be a pedagogy of place. It must address the specificities of the experience, problems, languages, and histories that community rely upon to construct a narrative of collective identity. We must give the students, most of you, a lens to help you see and connect to the world, right? This can be done at its best in the place, an embodied practice. That's why I had you stand, right, and feel what it was like to stand in 18042. Developing a sense of place where you realize the impact of your actions and what it has on the local community, that is life and that is important. If we seek to develop active citizens, which is part of the Lafayette mission, yes, my yes in the mountains of Nicaragua, the opportunity to connect what they are learning to how they live rather than what they will do. We asked that, right? I heard some questions at lunch. What are you going to do? You graduate, what are you going to do? Let's start asking, how are you going to live? We can begin with how they live in the present moment, how they live and connect in 18042. Because give me a place to stand, and I, you all, will move the world. Thank you.